Hello everyone, welcome to the third part of the series looking at Nicho Sai Kata. We're going to look at the third section. So we've so far covered the entire section of a kata that goes forward. We're going to get to the part where we're now going to turn and go left. So I'll show you in reference to where we just were, but then I'll probably perform it going forward just for the sake of the camera. Okay, so the section of the kata we've got up to is we've just finished and done double punch to the front. So the next bit is we would first look to the left and we're going to turn Gedanuk and then drive forward, Jordanuke and then through ski. And the kata then continues going to the left. Okay. So a couple of points first. From the Chudan ski, obviously from here, we also change the direction, it is important to look first. So we look to create Embusen and then we're going to pivot. Now, two things which got common mistakes here to watch out for. Number one is unnecessary elevation. So be careful of going and sort of coming up very, very high. So you want to keep down and keep your weight into your right leg. You still want to make sure that as you turn that you get to the hip. Be careful with your Gedanuk of an excessive lift here and then sort of coming across. So as you turn, you want your body to be beginning to turn, covering to the shoulder position for the Gedanuk, and then your hip to come out and back as you do the Gedanuk. So from here, 1, 2, so that your hips are in a hummy position and you're in cat stance. So one more time, from here, look, and then down and through. So that move usually is done singular. The next thing that then follows is the Jordanuke and then stepping forward to Chudan ski. And when you do the Jordanuke, your intention is to drive forward, to have the feeling of irimi. So from this position, rather than just simply coming straight upwards, the intent is to come in and drive forward, then step through and come through with your Chudan ski. When you do the Jordanuke, a couple of important points. First of all, make sure that your body is constantly in a state of rotation as you actually do the block. What do I mean by this? Well, from this position, as my arm comes across, so I always want to keep the weapon between me and my opponent. So I'm not going to prepare the block by pulling in this way, because then the weapon is between my own arm and my own body. So instead, from here, we just simply keep this foremost, so it's always protecting our body. But as I bring my arm across, I'm going to bring my body with the block. So it isn't just simply a vertical lift on the arm. And the reason this small movement is so important is that it means that the application of force on my blocking arm is constantly changing direction, which means if I encounter resistance, i.e. a strike, I'm far more likely to be able to redirect it more efficiently. This really needs to be practiced with a partner to be fully appreciated, but it's important. The final bit of the head block that's important is that it is got a kake movement at the end of it, a hooking movement. So it isn't just here and stop. There is a distinct feeling of coming in and then hooking with the tang of the sai in against the bow, so that you block and hook. So at the end, there's a small hooking movement. Some people will exaggerate this and will practice and almost bring it down almost like a Chudan position. That's not what we do. It's not wrong, it's just an application of the same thing. From here we come 1 and just keep it. So the end position is that my blocking hand ends roughly on my centre line, but it needs to be understood that the actual block occurs before that and then pulls and hooks across to clear the centre line to then allow the body to step through. In sort of the theme of these 3 moves, you want to be careful not to have, again, unnecessary lift. So we've already talked about on the first move, making sure that you stay down, and then I would drive more forward, but just for space I'm going to avoid that. Make sure that when you do the head block, that with the punch you then don't come up, come down, and have that Instead, you want to have a feeling of driving through and keeping nice and low. So that's the bit that immediately follows the 2 punches. After that, we go into our main combination again, our tokui combination, 3 more times. And we get to the position of doing a double punch. So here in the kata, we look, 1, we drive, 2, we step all the way through. We then repeat our main combination. So Chudansuki, Geidan Harayuk, Norodsuki, Geidanuk. And then we repeat for a 3rd time. And then when we get to the end of the 3rd combination, we finish with Nihonsuki, double punch again. And at this phase in the kata, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go back the way that we came. So if I was following the original embusen of the kata, I've come forward, I've turned left, I've gone all the way that way doing our combination 3 times and double punch, and now I'm going to turn and I'm going to come back. So let's just talk about the turn, and let's talk about ways that this can be done. You will find that some schools will favour the stepping of the front leg and turning into a headlock, where you're then going to step and come through the punch in exactly the same way we just had for the previous section. The primary reason for favouring the shift of the front foot is the intention that as the attack comes along the embusen here, the shift of the front foot brings you off the embusen and then brings you forward. So this is one valid way of doing it. It isn't the way that I would normally practice it, but there's nothing wrong with that. And as I said before, as long as you can rationalise the methodology that you apply, and when you do your kata, it really doesn't matter. The method that we do is slightly different because we focus on the idea of irimi, the idea of entering, in much the same way we did in the previous section, where we drop and then we drive through with the headlock and the ski. So instead, we have this feeling. As we come for the punch, instead of taking my front foot across, I'm simply going to pivot and I'm going to come into a kamae. So I take my back foot. So this is totally transitional. I'm not going to pause there, but the important thing is that again the weapon is foremost between me and my opponent. And then immediately off this movement, going to drive in. Okay, so from here, so I recognise that there's an opponent behind. I'm going to pivot and start to come into my kamae. And then as I do this, I'm going to drive off my back leg and drive immediately straight forward with the headlock, and then come through and ski. So 2 natural questions that follow that is, why do we do it this way, and why do I preference that way? And this comes down to 2 important ideas. First of all, Sai is a short range weapon. Think about the first move of this kata, it doesn't have enough time spent on thinking about the real significance of it. And as I alluded to in the first video, the original variation of the first move of the kata was most probably driving forward and coming straight through with a thrust. But in reality, now this becomes Chudansuki. So the immediate move is driving us straight forward. It's the first thing that the kata tells us to do. You know, your opponent begins to attack, enter. That's the principle, that's the generi that the kata is getting at. Enter immediately, as soon as you've got an opportunity. Why? You have a short range weapon, your objective is to close and mitigate distance. If you don't do that, you're simply going to get picked off. It's like if you were fighting somebody who's got very, very, very tall, very, very long legs, an excellent kicker. You wouldn't try and fight them at their kicking range, where they've got the advantage and you were just going to get picked off. So it's exactly the same. The primary goal of short range weapons, such as Sai, is that you have to be able to control the distance effectively between you and your opponent. This is no different to most martial arts. You can summarise almost all of them as the management and control of distance. But it's particularly important with short range weapons that you can close the distance down on a long range weapon in order to make them less effective and your weapon more effective. Obviously, if you stay at a longer range, a long range weapon is clearly going to have both mechanical advantage, and your opponent's going to be at a safe distance that's going to make any strikes or techniques you do ineffective. So the idea of irimi, the idea of entry, is crucial to your understanding of how to apply this weapon. So why do I preference this method? So downside with pivoting off my back foot is, yes, I do avoid the end%, which is a good thing, but particularly if my opponent's much stronger and bigger than me, but I haven't necessarily gained any distance on him. Not necessarily. I'm going to caveat that. It's dependent. If my opponent comes in with a very, very heavy attack and I just pivot, he might be sufficiently close enough to me that that's it, you know, and the action of stepping and hitting would be perfect, and I simply don't need anything else. But equally, I have to be prepared that my opponent might be slightly more cautious and more hesitant. So in order to address the attack, rather than simply pivoting off the line, the idea is to enter and intercept, okay, and then take it forward. So instead of this, we have a slightly more aggressive drive forward, and because I'm driving forward immediately with momentum, I'm going to cover a greater distance. I'm far more likely to chase my opponent down. Again, from just a different angle, so from here, and then through. So that's the methodology that we use. A couple of little points I just want to make in terms of possible mistakes. Number one is be really conscious of how you pivot. So again, you don't want to come up. You want to make sure that you keep a good connection with your feet. You stay in a low posture so that you can drive off that back foot as you come forward. Also think about the position of the sai. So if I do it from this angle, make sure that you don't turn with the block or without the kamae, having your arms down. It isn't a case of I'm turning and waiting. That's not the intention. As soon as I begin to turn, the weapons come with me. So they stay in front, drive, and then come forward through. So just to complete the next section of the kata, after we've got the turn, we repeat our combination 3 more times. So we're here, we've turned, we drive forward, we step through, and again, we do our Geidan Harayuk, Norodsuki, Geidan, step through, Hadari, left side, and then a third time, Chudan-tsuki, Geidan Harayuk, Norodsuki, Geidanuk, and then Nihon-tsuki, 2 punches. And that brings us to the final phase of the kata, which we'll look at in the next video. So this section of the kata really is the longest section we've covered, in fact, but includes quite a lot of repetition. So we're repeating the primary combination 6 times in this section of the kata. So just to recap, we finished the previous section. We look to the left, we do inne kwashidachi, geidan, uk, drive forward, jodan uke, and then through chudan-tsuki. We then repeat our key combination 3 times, so right, left, right, and then double punch. And then we turn, come through, and repeat in the opposite direction again 3 times, double punch. And this brings us to the 4th section of the kata. I hope you found this useful, and as always, if you've got any questions on anything that we've covered, please don't forget to put them in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.